you will have a cyber security issue to contend with. And let's not position this as a purely fintech problem. Are you with me? Thank you. So we talked about cybersecurity. I gave some insights into an exercise that we had done recently as part of an initiative with Citigroup and I think the UK FCO, looking at Sub-Saharan Africa and how we can build cyber resilience. So that is there, that's an issue. But I think beyond cybersecurity, policymakers are faced with a number of considerations, a few questions that have no easy answers. And trust me, I've had this conversation here in Nigeria, places in the US where I went to speak at the University of Michigan and at the annual meetings, and nobody has one answer. The first one, the obvious one, the elephant in the room, is the supervisory and regulatory question. You don't need to ask me how many text messages I get sending me a link that said, DG, have you seen this company? Is it regulated by you? Can you go and check it out? This is what they're doing. And the question arises because there are new companies that are doing the same things banks are doing, but are not being regulated like banks. So if you ask a typical bank, it will tell you, oh, these fintechs, you're not regulating them, you're giving us all these rules, they don't have these rules. If you ask fintechs, they'll tell you, oh, you're stifling our innovation, your license fees are too high, or why should I need the license for this? Everybody has a view. So the regulatory question is there. Now, let me position the question for you. The question is around, in the past, it used to be, we give you a license, you operate in a certain way within the guidelines of that license, and we regulate you based on how you're operating. Today, we don't even know, or we have to make decisions around what kind of licenses to give. I understand there are multiple licenses out there. I've been talking to a lot of the operators, and we need to streamline those licenses to determine what each license can do or what it can't do. It's also about, should we be regulating activity instead of institutions? I always talk about the duck theory. If it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, maybe it's a duck even though it looks like a lion. Those are all of the choices that regulators are faced with and they need to make. And they need to make these decisions, keeping in mind that they do not want to stifle innovation, because it's this innovation that will bring financial inclusion, that will reduce the cost of delivering financial services, and that will, of course, translate into the economic growth that we are all seeking. There are data issues or data considerations, data collection considerations. As you go digital, and one of the advantages of digital is that you then have all of these data. You have data on financial usage, you have social data, because when we started, and I'll talk a bit about credit scoring later, we're looking at how we can improve credit scoring, and we are seeing that a number of institutions already are using social footprints to make credit decisions. Who governs all of this data? Who governs how it is used? And then you have fintechs partnering with banks. Again, the MD of EcoBank showed us all that. In fact, I'm going to take this your slide and carry it to Central Bank and show them all the things you're doing that are not within the rules. You have banks partnering with fintechs, right? Now, these small organizations increasingly also have data. I don't know, like somebody has to be regulating that. I know we have some data rules that have come up with the country, and I know that we've also issued some guidelines around data, but it is a consideration and we need to think about it. Consumer protection. Whilst we are happy that, okay, we're expanding loans, if you notice, we've been talking a lot, the central bank has been talking a lot about how we can get more loans in the hands of individuals and small businesses. So anyone doing that is, knock wood, doing the right thing. However, how can we make sure that they are keeping with consumer protection? How can we make sure that they are not being discriminatory in the loans they are giving? How do we make sure that pricing is fair and competitive? Then the shadow banking industry, if you're not under regulatory purview and you're moving large amounts of money, we might be missing out on the monetary transmission mechanism that you, or the part you play in that space, if that's not visible to us. And then, of course, the competitive conversation around competition for banks, competition for other institutions, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, as long as the risks are well articulated. So All regulatory institutions, including central bank, are faced with developing the framework that will keep up with these technological changes, that will retain the confidence that is sine qua non. I think that's the word I will use. It is the basic requirement for users of financial transactions to be sure that the entire system is safe and credible. We also need to think about how we use proportionality in our supervision, in our regulatory frameworks, etc. So the CBN is well aware of this and is not usually reported, but I dare say that the CBN has been at the forefront of enabling all of the things that we see today. The legal framework, the regulatory framework, the infrastructure that we put in place, particularly in the payment space. All of the guidelines and regulations we brought out that have enabled people get licenses that have disrupted the payment space happen out of the initiatives of the CBN. The Payment System Vision 2020, which is supposed to create this internationally respected, robust payment system, has all of these elements that I've put in. The creation of NIBS, which everyone is talking about today, as a central switch to provide plug-in infrastructure is one of that. And a host of guidelines, which I will not go into, is what has brought us to this, should I say, inflection point. Recently, last year, we created a new department. And that was in response to the consideration of which institutions would we regulate, which will we license. It gave us an opportunity to have a more detailed focus on what's happening around the fintech space. We also introduced license tiering on the payment system side, trying to refine the number of licenses you need, trying to refine the capital requirements for each license, trying to refine what each license can allow you to do or that prohibits you. As we speak, we are working on a regulatory sandbox, and that's what I tell my friends that send me all of these text messages. Don't worry, we are looking at all of these companies, because if you do not understand what the participants are doing, it will be very difficult to bring a regulatory response that is fit for purpose. So we'll continue to navigate this environment, and that is why I made the effort to be here. We'll continue to take very seriously the primary mandate is financial stability. Part of that mandate is financial inclusion, and everything that would allow us to achieve that will be pursued. We see this as an opportunity, I see this as an opportunity to identify new institutions, to license, to understand the ecosystem and the framework we're dealing with, and like I said before, to achieve our goals. So, in conclusion, I think it's important to say that fintech as a tool, as institutions, will help us meet a number of objectives. Customers will have greater freedom, wider access, at favorable prices, even zero prices, if you ask the MD of EcoBank. Financial access, particularly in Nigeria, where we are looking at growing credit. Out of 40 million, I think, history, and that gap is significant. Yes, 63.2% of Nigerians are financially included, but financial inclusion is not inclusion in itself. It is about also expanding access within those that are included. Fintech would help regulators, and increasingly, we're already deploying that in supervisory technology and RegTech, regulatory technology, to enhance the things we're doing and all of those good stuff. I think the challenge before us, like I said before, shall be to thrive, not survive, through the revolution so that the benefits outweigh the risks. And I'd like to just leave you with a few additional thoughts from my perspective. We see innovation. As regulators, we see innovation, and it is good, but it must be responsible, it must be inclusive, and it must be held accountable. We'd like to see where the industry itself can help the policymakers to self-regulate? How can the industry bring up the smaller startups that have less operational risk frameworks? They have less developed corporate governance, and they have less developed cyber resilience frameworks. How can the more established fintechs help the smaller ones to achieve that? How will fintech leverage the opportunity to include the excluded Nigerians? When I went round on my way here, I saw a number of innovative solutions, but many of them needed to have a bank account behind it. And what that tells you is that it is appealing to those that are already within the financial system. Again, I'm challenging you, how do we get the last man and woman that does not have a bank or an ATM or an agent within a 5-mile or 10-mile radius to be included? How will this help us in our identity management? We've done very well with BVN, and I know NIMSI as well, which is managing the national ID, is working on a project to consolidate identity management systems, but we need to see more innovation in that space. How do we address some of the imbalances, youth imbalances, gender imbalances? I thank God the MD of EcoBank started first on the gender matter. So it is not only my voice. And I think gender inclusion has become even more prominent when we see that current growth has been unsustainable. And research has shown that part of it is because we are leaving behind about 50% of the talent that should be contributing to that growth. So these are some of the other aspects I want us to think about and talk about over the next 2 or 3 days. I have reviewed the event schedule. I think, President, you said you had about 70 speakers. And the quality of speakers, their backgrounds, gives me a lot of confidence that a lot will be discussed. I look forward to receiving the communique that will come out of this. And we look forward to partnering with everyone to create an industry that is inclusive, that is globally recognized, that gives confidence, and more importantly, supports economic growth. Thank you for listening.
I would like to ask Madam Deputy Governor to please remain on stage. Madam Deputy Governor, please remain on stage for a minute. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to have a quick photo op. And I would like to make this announcement and ask for the following distinguished personalities to please join Madam Deputy Governor on stage. The Honorable Commissioner for Finance in Lagos State, Mr. Rabiu Oluwo Onolakbo. Can we please have you on stage, sir? Can we also have, and as a matter of fact, this is now the order was not appropriate because it is now my understanding that the representative of the governor of Lagos State is present within our midst, ladies and gentlemen, and it is in the person of the Honorable Commissioner of the Ministry of Science and Technology. That is the name that should have come first, so do pardon that error. But please welcome to the stage the representative of the Governor of Lagos State, the Honorable Commissioner of the Ministry of Science and Technology, Mr. Hakeem Fahim. Can we get a round of applause as he makes his way up to the stage? Thank you very much for your presence. We would also like to have the special advisor to the Governor on Innovation, Mr. Tubosun Alake. Can we have you up on the stage, please? Can we, of course, have the President of the Fintech Association of Nigeria, Dr. Shegun Aino? And just please keep the applause coming. We will also have, of course, the acting DG SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, Madam Mary Uduk. Can we get a round of applause as she makes her way to the stage? We will also have the Managing Director, CEO, EcoBank Nigeria, Mr. Patrick Akinwuton. Can we also have the ED for Technology, ED for IT and Operations for Access Bank PLC, Mr. Ade Bajomo. A round of applause. And last but not least, the President of CIBN, Dr. Uche Olowu. Can we get a round of applause? This is the first set of photo ops. There will be perhaps some others later. Can we please change the backdrop? Can we kindly change the backdrop and make it blank? The request is to make, well, Doctor, I know, should it be blank or should we have, blank is fine. It brings the quality of the picture higher. We'll have both. So if it's possible to also have blank, why not for a moment? Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. You may return to your seats at will. Can we please get a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? And as they make their way to their seats, I would like to say that was quite an important conversation that I would like to highlight in just a few words. One of the first questions that came up is, how do you regulate innovation without stifling it? How do you keep up as a regulator with the changes while keeping the confidence, the safety, and the credibility that is necessary to have a sustainable market? Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Deputy Governor of Central Bank said that it's important for innovation to be responsible, inclusive, and accountable. And one critical underlying factor, ladies and gentlemen, that has become an underlying theme is that for innovation in the fintech sector to be sustainable, inclusion is critical. If the two keynote speakers at the beginning were majorly underlying that as key highlights, then it's an important piece. And one of the things that I've made clear from the beginning is that you don't have to remain in one silo as an incumbent, as a disruptor, as an innovator, or a regulator. There is the possibility to be one and the other, maybe even all of the above. And we do know that RegTech is an opportunity for fintech to help regulators be more innovative. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to more important conversations. And at this point, I move on to the next keynote. And this is a keynote presentation, ladies and gentlemen. And it comes from an individual that has a 25-year track record of excellence in delivery in the global financial services sector, spanning banking, capital markets, asset management, as well as insurance. Can we please welcome warmly to the stage the ED, being the Executive Director of IT and Operations of Access Bank PLC, Mr. Ade Bajomo. Can we get a round of applause for this important keynote speaker? Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a great FinTech week. I think we've had some fantastic speakers, but before I start, I'll stand over existing protocol, but very quickly recognize the President of the FinTech Association, the representative of the Lagos State Government, the Honorable Commissioner for Science and Technology, the Commissioner for for Finance, the DG, Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and of course, the President of the Chartered Institute of Bankers. Let me start without much ado. My theme today is very simple. It's around, call it surviving, call it thriving. I think we're all in different states, or people are in different states, but whatever it is, it's about fintech innovation. What are the sustaining factors? There are several themes around this, but I'm talking about capacity building, and I'm focusing on a specific area, which is around data. Big data, small data, game changers in digital transformation. Because all of this is about digital transformation. Fintech on its own is meaningless if it doesn't add value in some form or way to society or to organizations or to the way we live. So it's driving digital change. It starts with your data. So most organizations are on a journey from data to information. The winners, of course, are well on track from information to insight, actionable insights. And you will see some of these examples as we go along. So I've got 6 key themes, talking about data and putting it in perspective. Digital transformation. We spend a short time on small data, big data, what it means and why that is important to us. Talk about security. A lot has been said about security. You can't do this without security. But more importantly, if you're really going to have a winning game in this space, it's got to be around culture. The culture has to be very, very different. And of course, in this new world of digital transformation, if you don't have trust and privacy, then there's no foundation to build on. So data is all around us. Everywhere you look around, it's data. Greater than 500 million tweets per day, over 1 billion hours of video watched on YouTube on a day-to-day basis. Over almost 269 billion emails sent every day, 3.2 million searches of Google every day. You can just see it. The world is all about data. In fact, Clive Humby, the mathematician and the architect of Tesco Club Card, for those of you who know Tesco Club Card, coined the phrase back in 2006 that data is the new oil. The Economist made it popular 2 years ago that data is the new oil. But what does it mean that data is the new oil? So if anybody ever used Tesco Club Card, you will see that as soon as you put in your card, Tesco was able to get some interesting insights about you. They knew what you purchased. They knew your purchasing pattern. They knew how frequently you attended their stores. And they could actually personalize the offers they make to you. They can actually grant you offers based on what they think you should buy, based on what you bought, and basically drive more sales. It's not for free. It's actually to meet an end, really. Drive more sales, drive more insights, and actually serve you better, as a customer. So, imagine you have the data. It's a new superpower. Yeah, you have the access and ability to see everything, everywhere, wherever you want it, however you want it, really. You have the insight to be able to process all the information that you need. You can predict, and of course, you can turn all of these into actually driving competitive advantage, regardless of the space you are in, be it revenue or be it services, as the case is. You saw an earlier slide earlier on by one of the first presenters, and it's talking about the 5 most valuable companies in the world deal with data, full stop. The 5 most valuable companies in the world used to be manufacturing, if you look back 50 years ago. Then it changed to oil companies primarily, if you then look back about 20 years ago. Today, it's now all about data. And they're doing interesting, amazing things with the data, if you look at it very carefully. So Amazon is able to basically generate 30% of its sales on predictive data. So they can see what you've been buying, and they can see what those who are similar to you have been buying, and use that to actually predict or throw in front of you what you should be buying. And based on that, you just naturally press the click and it sells. It makes your life easier. It generates sales and revenue. So remember, it's a means to an end. It's not data on its own. They're using it to drive value within their business. Microsoft does the same. Apple, if you ever used iTunes in music, they can use it to actually predict the next selection that you want. Facebook is well known for it, and of course, you can't talk about data without mentioning Google. So, you have all the opportunities, all the growth in data, but the risks are growing very well as well. The deputy governor mentioned cyber security incidents. It's growing at a phenomenal rate. Malware is growing at a phenomenal rate. The cost of cybercrime is going to hit close to $1 trillion this year. So if you are actually a criminal, why would you do it the analog way? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And of course, the average cost paid per stolen data is going up as well. So this is a very serious business. But when you talk about data, it doesn't exist on its own. We have to understand the framework that actually powers data, really. And because without this, really, it all just doesn't hang on very well. And there are probably 5 key ones. There are many others, but there are 5 key ones I want to emphasize today. So right on the data facilitates a number of other required, if you like, components of the digital transformation. There's no way you can do artificial intelligence and machine learning without data. I know there's a lot is spoken about artificial intelligence, but all we are today doing at best is machine learning, where we can throw a lot of data to the computer, and the computer in turn interprets that data and actually tells what next to do, as opposed to the way we used to program historically. There's the Internet of Things, so everything now has a data. If you look around you, everybody carries an Internet of Thing of sorts. Your mobile phone is an Internet of Things. Yeah, it can actually track your location. And if you turn on your location, it can use the Nest mobile phone hub or mask to actually see exactly where you are and predict where you are. So every device is connected. The light bulbs are now connected, cameras are connected, and you're going to see that trend increase and grow, phenomenally. And of course, automation is driven by data. The robots can't know what to do if they don't have data around them. If they're not actually taking views, depending on what they are, analyzing that data, using machine learning, maybe a bit of artificial intelligence, and making the insights that are required. And of course, social networks. Yeah, we all use Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever. Twitter, it's all around data, around us really. And all of this is being made and to happen with cloud computing. Because you only need to think back 10 years ago, with no cloud computing. If you really wanted to participate in this new digital transformation or as a fintech, then you will have had to go and build big computer data centers or small computer data centers. The cost of actually operating that is phenomenal. With cloud computing, with $1,000, you can set up a business anywhere in the world, do your own programs and whatever you want to do, and bingo, you're up and running very quickly. So those are the 5 key forces. But all of this can't survive without data, really. I spoke a bit about data and how it's changed. But we're now in the 4th industrial revolution. You'll hear many of the speakers talk about that the 4th industrial revolution is literally powered by data. People will tell you in 2017 that things changed. Prior to the 3rd industrial revolution, we had the 3rd industrial revolution, which is about the power of the transistors and what the transistors did. And that happened from about the 50s to where we are now. And prior to that, you had the 2nd industrial revolution, which is about automation. That's the 1900 when Henry Ford was making cars on assembly lines and all of that. And then the 1st industrial revolution, where we had the steam engine. And the steam engine brought about railroads and telegraph lines. If you think through all of these revolutions, the underlying principle is data again. You're transmitting data at phenomenal rates in the 1800s to get decisions made, perhaps in terms of buying commodities in stock market. You're using data to automate in the 2nd industrial revolution, the 3rd industrial revolution, where the ENIAC computer was built, with 18,000 tubes. Was actually crunching data at phenomenal rates, to fight wars and win wars, and get insights and decode intelligence. And now you're right now again on data. So the world is just about data, and it's transforming what we do. And whatever we do, that's really where the fundamental building block is. It's the assets to protect. It's the fundamental thing to look for. So small data, big data, people talk a lot about that. What are these really? And very briefly, really, in small data, we're talking about what most organizations and firms will typically manage. Great enough, the human brain can handle it. They steady stream throughout the day. You know what might change, what might happen. We use the standard tools, Microsoft SQL, Excel, spreadsheets, and all of those kind of stuff. And, people get analytics out of it. But big data is actually various sources of data coming in near real time, aggregated from various sources, far, much more than the human brain can comprehend. So you need computing power, you need new tools to analyze this data because most of the data is unstructured and you have to analyze it in an unstructured manner and make real-time decisions out of it. I mean, just think about how Google Maps actually predict where there's traffic or tell you, not predict, tell you exactly, it's prescriptive. This is where there's traffic and this is where there's no traffic if you ever try to use it. Yeah, it's basically pulling data all from your phones. It has a geographical location. It knows the speed of the road you're driving at. So if you're on Third Mainland Bridge, it knows you can drive at 100 kilometers an hour. So if everybody's driving at 5 kilometers an hour and it's picking the signals, it can predict there's a traffic, it can predict the length of the traffic, and also prescribe to you the routes to take to avoid that traffic, so to speak, really. So you can now see big data being aggregated from various sources, driving information, driving innovation, changing the way people live, helping to make solutions and decisions as well, really. So I spoke about all of this, prescriptive. So is data actually telling you what to do? Predictive, basically anticipating what you should do. Diagnostic, basically telling you about, what happens or what doesn't happen. And of course, descriptive, which is what we do today, just basic analysis of data. But the key thing here is that organizations, regardless of who you are, firms, whatever, need to take a step back, look at their data, look at how to better exploit it to get to that top of the pyramid, which is the prescriptive element of data. Only because it's only comparative. If you're a big organization, you'll be looking at building huge infrastructures around data, and you have no choice. Depending on what you're trying to do with data, you'll have to build your warehouse, lakes, put all your operational stuff you need, and have all the languages and have your data scientists and engineers working on it. If you are relatively small organizations, there are tools out there for you. I've brought an example up here. These are tools from Microsoft. Just simplifies the whole thing. You can have tools from Google. Amazon have the tools as well. And those tools allow you to basically visualize the data and present the data. Many people use Power BI these days. Those tools allow you, without actually understanding the data science, carry out machine learning analysis and do pretty accurate predictives on data and so on and so forth. And if you're really interested here, it's certainly one to explore, rather than trying to look for various tools, which then gives you an incoherent strategy, so to speak. Really. So, in the financial services industry, which fintechs are part of, data remains extremely key. Most of the investments that are being made today is being made on data analytics, because that's really where we can predict a number of things, really. Yes, mobile is important, artificial intelligence is important, cybersecurity is important, but it's about being able to better target our customers for growth, managing the risk and predicting risk. I need to know who's going to default before they default so we can take the right actions, so to speak, really. And opening up more opportunities and creating more businesses such as digital banks and all of that, really. So, more use cases in financial services, just to bring it home. If you have data about your customers, and this can apply beyond financial services, you can predict the customers that are going to churn. So looking at that data, you should be able to tell that this customer has not transacted for X amount of time and is going to churn. And there are tools around to make you do that. You can look at payment graphs and see when money comes into my account. And you can see that each time money comes in, I get paid on the 25th probably, but on the 22nd, I'm broke. And on the 22nd, you can use the data to offer me a loan, basically. So that's predictives, again, coming into play. Fraud prevention, where you can use location-based analytics to actually prevent fraud. So you can see that I'm in Lagos right now, basically, because that's really where I made my last transaction. And if within 2 minutes somebody is trying to use my card in London, definitely there's a fraud going on. So again, that's data at work, really. Customer feedback analytics, intelligent chatbots. Just think of it. If you have to manage 10 million customers, or even 40 million customers, how can you do that with the contact center? You have to move into data analytics again, chatbots and those kind of stuff, really. So data and looking at data opens up a new array of business opportunities that can be leveraged across a broad area. So this chart just gives some further examples of machine learning at play, and you may have heard this earlier on in some of the presentations, where you can take the data and you can start segmenting it. People who look at data deeply will typically look at it under 5 high levels attributes. I mean, there are far more attributes, but if you take a basic financial services data, you will do age analysis, and you can look at the age analysis and determine that people in this bracket, maybe 16 to 25, prefer to use mobile phones. And then you can target the services to them and dish out the services appropriately. People maybe between 60 and 70 prefer to go to your branches. And then again, what you offer them is again based on the data. You can use gender analysis to realize that, women tend not to default as much as men. And that's proven, by the way, by most, they can steal your computer, they can do all of those stuff. If they steal your computer, you can buy a new one. Just imagine if you lose your data. Imagine if the financial services organization cannot get your balance right. That is data. That is the power of data. That is why, you really can't play with it. And the reality is this, is that if you take this lightly, then you're going to get burnt. Because somebody once said there are two types of organizations in the world. Those that have been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked. So it's either you don't know you've been hacked, so you've probably been hacked anyway. So the security issues cannot be overestimated, especially for fintechs. If fintechs are connecting into financial services, offering services, providing loans and all of those kind of stuff, or even taking deposits, these things are real, these risks are real. Yeah, take the old analog world. Barely 5 years ago, you see, even till today, you see lots of banks, bullion vans going around. How much can you put in naira? So if you had a gang of thieves who were targeting bullion vans, how many bullion van raids would they have to target before they get caught and shot? I think the maximum number I've ever received was 5. And maybe over 5 weeks. So within 5-6 weeks, they'll get caught and shot. In the digital world, you can raid a bank or whatever you want to raid and take $1 billion within 5 seconds and sit somewhere in like North Korea or wherever you want to sit. So the whole game is changed completely. And these are real life examples, really. I mean, many of you may have heard of the Bank of Bangladesh. They recovered most of the money, but they were still out by $89 million. So, and all that happened within 5 seconds. And it's all vanished in the air. So it's a new world